Welcome to the Dropout Multimillionaire podcast, hosted by best-selling author and serial entrepreneur Brian Will. Here we go.
Welcome back to today's episode of the Dropout Multimillionaire podcast. I am your host, Brian Will, and this podcast is based on my best-selling book, The Dropout Multimillionaire, 37 Business Lessons on How to Succeed in Business with no money, no education, and no clue. Now, today we're going to talk about success, or more specifically, we're going to talk about the 5 keys to success. I've recently written a couple of articles on these topics for 2 different magazines, including Forbes. In one article, I wrote about the 5 things I wish I knew before starting my business. And in the other, I wrote about the 5 reasons why startups fail. Both of these are similar topics, and today we're going to kind of blend them together and talk about these 5 keys. What you need to do or else. Let's start with number 1. If you are first starting out, here's the tip, here's the key, here's the thing. You don't know what you're doing. I'm not talking about the technical side of the business. Joe the plumber knows how to plumb. And if you're a chef, you know how to cook. That's not what I'm talking about. Success in business is more of a mindset than a skill set. You need to understand the business side of the business, or you will fail. You need to know things like insurance, liability, workman's comp, legal, contracts, accounting, gross margins, net margins, OSHA, the IRS, various state laws. You need to understand the paperwork, the banking, estimated payments, matching taxes. Then there's marketing, sales, labor costs, customer relations, and 100 other things that can and will trip you up. This is the business side of the business. And you need to understand how all that works. And if you don't, you need to go find someone to help you before you create a mess that can take you down. And trust me, I have seen it, and I have actually been there. So rule number 1 in our 5 rules, understand what you don't know and go get some help. Get a mentor, hire a coach, hire a professional manager, but get some help. Number 2, if you're starting out, or if you're already in business and not growing like you want, or you're not as profitable as you want, here's the second secret. You, my friend, are the problem. You're probably not making the right decisions about your business. And here's why. You don't know how. Unless you have experience in growing a business, unless you have failed enough in the past to learn, your personal filter is just guessing on what to do. In fact, we have another episode called The Personal Filter, so I won't go into it too deeply on this show, but the quick and dirty is this. You don't yet know how to succeed, so your decision-making process is really just a guessing process. Business is an art and a science. The science is the actual work. The rest of it is art. So how do you fix this? Guess what? Same answer as before. You need to hire a mentor or a coach to help you make the right decisions. You need to find somebody who is 10 to 20 steps ahead of you and get their help. You need to borrow their success filter until yours is up to speed. So rule number 2, hire a mentor or a coach. And yes, I know that is a redundant rule, but it's really that important. Number 3, figure out who you are in your business. If you're self-employed and it's just you, you're good. But if you want to build something big, you want something with intrinsic value, you want something you can eventually maybe sell, then you can't do it alone. In fact, there's a past episode called The 4 Personalities. You should go listen to that one to fully understand what I'm talking about here. Basically, they consist of the entrepreneur, the manager, the salesperson, and the specialist. I have found that most people who start businesses are specialists. I use the example of Joe the plumber who starts a plumbing business. The challenge is these same people also try to be the entrepreneur, they try to be the salesperson, and they try to be the manager. And unfortunately, you cannot be everything. It will not work long term. Managers are terrible at sales. Salespeople are terrible at being managers. Specialists are not salespeople or managers. Entrepreneurs are definitely not managers, although they are good at sales. And managers are not good at being entrepreneurs. If you are good at one of these, you need to stick to it. And then you need to go find someone else or some other people to do the rest. Because if you don't, You will not be able to grow, and you will not build value that somebody else will eventually want to buy from you. So rule number 3, check your ego. Get really honest with yourself. Figure out who you are and who you're not, and then bring in the right talent you need to help you grow. Number 4, know your numbers. This one is critical. I've said this in many other podcasts, and here it is again. You need to track your numbers, your P&L, weekly and monthly. You need to understand every cost, every revenue dollar. You need every percentage on every line item in your P&L. In fact, if you go back to another podcast titled Your Magic Crystal Ball and listen to it, you'll understand more about what I'm talking about here. Your P&L is a magic crystal ball that lets you time travel into the future to see how your business is going to do. So many businesses fail because they don't know what's going on. I'll give you a quick story. This guy comes to see me, I don't know, maybe a year ago. He hit me on email and he said, hey, I was in one of your restaurants. I own a burrito restaurant in North Georgia. It is one of the top burrito restaurants. We've won all kinds of awards. I want to franchise this thing and grow it like crazy. I want to be the next Chipotle. Would you be willing to sit down and talk to me? I said, sure. I said, but before we do, I need you to read my book because I don't want to reiterate stuff that you can read on your own. He said, great. We set up an appointment for the following week. The next week, I drove 30 minutes to get there, sat down with this kid, and I said, how you doing? And he said, well, I almost didn't show up today. And I said, why? And he said, well, because I read your book and I know the first thing you're going to ask me. And I said, well, what is that? And he said, you're going to ask me for my numbers. I said, that is exactly the first thing I'm going to ask you. So do you have them? And he said, no. I said, why not? He said, I don't really track them. I said, I don't understand what you're talking about. You don't have any P&Ls. And he said, no. I said, well, are you making money? He said, I don't know. I said, well, did you make money last year? He said, I don't know. I said, well, did you file your taxes last year? He said, yes, I did. I said, well, did you pay taxes? He said, no, I did not. I said, well, if you didn't pay your taxes or didn't pay any taxes, then you didn't make any money. So how are you paying your bills? And he said, my wife has a job. And I said, all right, we're going to stop right here. There is nothing I can say. There is no help I can give you. I literally am at a loss. You need to go home, build yourself 24 months worth of P&Ls, then call me back and we'll sit down and talk about it. Until then, there's nothing I can do for you. He said, I appreciate your help. I'll do that. It was a 10-minute conversation after a 30-minute drive there and a 30-minute drive home, by the way. We got up and left. He never called me back, and they were out of business a few months later. That's the problem with not having a P&L. You have no idea what's going on in your business. So rule number 4, track your numbers like a maniac. And if you're not good with numbers, guess what I'm going to say here? Either hire someone who is, or hire a mentor or a coach to come in and help you before you turn into the burrito guy and it's too late. Number 5, and for this one, I'm going to tell you a story. So everybody's familiar with Apple, right? Most of us probably have an Apple phone or an Apple computer. Do you know who the CEO of Apple is? It's a guy named Tim Cook. So Tim Cook is a CEO of Apple, largest company on planet Earth, most profitable company out there. Tim Cook is clearly a badass CEO businessman. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in the position he's in. Tim Cook and Apple have what's called a board of directors. Now, this board of directors, they come in about once a quarter, and they go to the big boardroom, and they all sit around this gigantic table, and they get their Jimmy John subs, and they're sitting there, and they pull them out and start eating, and they're like, all right, Tim, tell us the story. What's going on? What are your problems? And Tim says, well, here's what's going on with Apple. We got this problem. Foxconn in China needs to come out. We got tax issues. And he talks about their problems, and all these people with all their varied backgrounds, they say, okay, Tim, based on what we know, based on our experience, based on what we've been through, here's our advice to you to help you make decisions for Apple. And at the end of this 3 or 4 hour meeting, Tim Cook says, I appreciate it. Thanks. Everybody leaves. And he then takes all of their advice and makes the decisions on how to push Apple forward and remain a world-dominating company. Now I have to ask you, if Tim Cook needs a board of directors to help him make decisions, what makes you think you don't? you need to get a mentor or a coach to help you. That's it for today, folks. Everything I talk about is in the book, The Dropout Multimillionaire. If you want to learn more, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, my YouTube channel, where all the episodes are. Or to make it easy, go to www.brianwillmedia.com for more information on the book, social media, past podcasts, guest appearances, yada, yada, yada. And make sure you come back next week for the next episode of The Dropout Multimillionaire.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Dropout Multimillionaire. To learn more about how we can help you with your business, or if you'd like to be a guest on the show, visit www.brianwillmedia.com or The Dropout MM on Instagram.